Okay guys, today we are going to cover perimeter and area. We talked about this a little bit in class, but we're going to go ahead and do this a little bit here as well. So when covering perimeter and area, we need to know the difference between perimeter and area. So obviously, from talking about this in class, we have perimeter, and we know from our song that perimeter is the fence that goes all around. So we know that perimeter is the distance around an object. So if I have this rectangle right here, my perimeter would be all the way around it, every single side. Because we talked about in class how sometimes you won't have a perfect shape. Like you may have something like this that they want you to find the perimeter of. And if you have to find the perimeter of that, you have to label every single side, because the perimeter is the distance around an object. Now if that's the perimeter, what's the area? Well, the area, if I draw myself another rectangle, the area is the amount of space that an object takes up, the amount of the flat space. So if I have this rectangle, all of this inside is the area. And we talked about how it's like grass on a playground, carpet in a classroom, or paint on a wall. It's everything that covers up that space. So now that I know the difference between perimeter and area, how do I find the perimeter area of two different shapes? Well, if I have this rectangle right here, sometimes you're going to be asked to use a ruler to measure the sides of the rectangle or other shape, but sometimes they'll also just give you the measurement. So I'm just going to give you the measurements. I'm going to tell you that this side is 3 inches and this side is 2 inches. Now, I told you it was a rectangle, so remember what we know about rectangles is that opposite sides are the same. So if this side up here is 3 inches, we know that down here is also 3 inches. And if the side is 2 inches, I know that the other side is also 2 inches, because I told you it was a rectangle, so we know that's true about rectangles. Now, let's talk about perimeter first. We said in the first slide that perimeter is the fence that goes all around, so perimeter is all the way around a shape. So what I have to do is figure out the length of every side, right? You already see I have the length of every side. So now I just add them all together so that I can get the total distance around that object. So I take this 3 inches plus 2 inches, which is 5 inches, plus another 3, which is 8 inches, plus another 2, which is 10 inches. So my perimeter equals 10 inches. Remember that we always write the measurement with the number. We never just write the number down, because otherwise I won't know what measurement you're using and you're going to get it wrong in class. So 10 inches is my perimeter. Now, using this exact same figure, what if I wanted to find the area? What if I wanted to find all this space in here? Well, if you remember from our song we learned in class, that area, to get the area we have to multiply. And you remember, what do we multiply? We multiply 1 length times 1 width. Well, remember that we say it's 1 length times 1 width, because we're not going to multiply all the numbers on our shape. We're only multiplying 1 length and 1 width. So if my length is 3 and my width is 2, and I multiply those, 3 times 2, I get an area of 6. But it's 6 inches squared. It's not just 6, it's 6 inches squared. Now, why was this one just 10 inches? And this one was 6 inches squared with this little 2 up here. And I know that 2 kind of looks like it's right there with the rest of them. So let me erase that and make it look a little neater, because it's supposed to look like this, where the 2's up here. Now, it's this, the way I always say to remember it is we just added a bunch of numbers, so it's just the regular 10 inches for perimeter. When looking at the area, the reason it's 10 inches squared is because we multiplied 2 numbers. When we multiplied those 2 numbers, we put that squared up here because that's how many numbers we multiplied. When we figure out volume later, you'll see we'll change this number to a different number as well, because of the amount of factors that we're multiplying to get our product. So let's take a different shape. Let's take a square. So I'm going to draw me a square out here. So I said that was a square, and I'm going to tell you this side is 4 inches long. Now, I asked you if I ask you to figure out the perimeter area, how are you going to do it without knowing the other sides? Well, I told you this was a square, so what do we know is true about a square? We know that all the sides are equivalent in a square, so I can go ahead and label all my sides. And first, let's find the perimeter. So to get the perimeter, we have to add all the sides. So 4 inches plus 4 inches is 8, plus 4, 12, plus 4, 16. So my perimeter is 16 inches because I added all the sides, and perimeter is like a fence. And you can see it's like I drew a fence around my property. Now if I wanted to find the area, remember that we said it's 1 length times 1 width, so I circle my 1 length, I circle my 1 width, and now I'm ready to find area. 4 times 4 is 16 inches squared. Now you see our perimeter and our area were the exact same number in this problem. But our perimeter is 16 inches, and our area is 16 inches squared because we had two numbers that we multiplied. What you'll see here is the mathematics chart that you'll be given on your STAR test. The front has all your metric and customary measurements, but the back of the mathematics chart has formulas for perimeter and area. So let's look at the formulas for area first. The formula for a square is side times side. Well, that's what we just did. We just did this side times this side. So we did exactly what the formula said. And the formula for a rectangle is length times width. Now, why do you think this says length times width while this says side times side? Well, in a square, we can't really identify the length and the width because they're all the same side. So that's why they just say side times side. In a rectangle, it's easy to identify the length and the width because they're different sizes. Now, perimeter also has formulas, but we don't really use the formulas too much in 5th grade because we just add the sides. But what they're telling you is if you're finding the perimeter of a square, you know that a square has 4 sides, and you know that every side is the same length. So to get the perimeter faster, you could just say 4 times whatever the length of that side is, because I could have said, oh, I'll just take my perimeter equals 4 times the sides. Okay, well, I do 4 times, and what's the length of one of my sides? The length of one of my sides is 4. 4 times 4 is 16, so there's my perimeter. And you see that it matches the original perimeter that we found. But that's only for a square. For a rectangle, for a perimeter, you can do 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So there are formulas you can plug the information into as well, but we're really trying to understand perimeter and area, so we're not going to be using the perimeter formulas too much in class. So all we have to do is remember that there are 2 things that we're going to be finding. One is perimeter, the other is area, and we know that if we have a shape like a rectangle, we know that to find the perimeter, to get the perimeter, we have to add all the sides, so I'd trace over every side and add them as I trace. And to get the area, that's the space inside of an object like carpet, paint, grass. To get the area, we have to multiply 1 length times 1 width. So that's the difference between perimeter and area.